Well, hello. Welcome to the Photo Brigade podcast. I'm Robert Kaplan, and I've got my good friend, Keith Bedford. How you doing, Keith?
Hi, Robert. I'm good.
You're on TV.
It's strange to be on TV.
Internet TV. And you wore a tie for me?
Yeah, it's because I have a face for radio.
Well, not radio anymore. So I want to welcome Keith Bedford onto the podcast. He is, was a longtime New York City freelance photographer who basically took me under your wing when I first got to the city. I remember all these times hanging out at Starbucks and meeting all the freelance crew and transmitting and BSing.
Well, I mean, you and I met at a workshop, Eddie Adams'
workshop prior to that.
And, you were already kind of like the rock star intern because you'd done an internship at the LA Times and then one at the New York Times.
Well, thank you.
Every year I do Eddie Adams, I would say that I could only add one more friend to my circle of friends. So it's like, I did it for 8 years. I only well, that's not true, but out of the students, I sort of took one student home with me.
And that was me.
And that was you that year.
Oh, well, that's sweet. But the exciting news, and I have to say, big congratulations, is that you've just announced officially, I kind of knew this a little while back, but you just announced officially what?
I am leaving being a freelancer to be a staff photographer for the Boston Globe.
And that's like the first time you've ever been staff, yeah?
No, actually.
No.
I had a staff job at a small newspaper, the Trenton Times.
Oh, okay, back in the day.
For 4 years.
Oh.
Before I moved to New York.
Trenton, New Jersey?
Trenton, New Jersey.
Well, son of a gun. I guess I didn't realize that.
Home of the Thunder.
Home of the Thunder down under.
Trenton Thunder, minor league baseball.
Before we get to it, I just want to give a quick shout out to our partners here, Adorama, which is where we're doing the podcast today in their event space. You can go to adorama.com/events to see all the different events we've got going on and they've got going on a daily basis. Canon Professional Services, great organization, CPS. And then we have Tenba Bags. They make some great bags, which I know we've all used, and Rode Microphones for these beautiful, fancy microphones. So thank you guys for bringing this to us. So I want to talk with you about all sorts of things. Maybe we should talk a little bit also about the Eddie Adams Workshop, because that's where we met.
Right.
And the Eddie Adams Workshop. Can you give me your thoughts on Eddie Adams?
It's like a cult.
It's like a cult.
But I mean, it's
in a good way.
In a good way. It's a community started by the photojournalist Eddie Adams, who's since passed on, but his wife Alyssa has kept it running since his death, and every year 100 of the best photographers from around the world, it used to really only be from around the country, but from around the world, apply to join the workshop.
Yep.
And the workshop is separated into 3 tiers of faculty: editor, lead photographer, and a producer. And I was a producer for 8 years.
For 8 years?
8 years I was a producer. 1 year I went as a student. And I went as a student at a time where I wasn't sure what I was going to be doing with myself. I went directly after I left my job in Trenton and became a freelancer in New York. And I wasn't sure what direction I wanted to go in. I knew I didn't want to keep chasing the spot news or, I don't know, perp walks that I was always chasing for the daily news.
Did you, so what was when you had this experience, did it just settle everything with you? Was it this is the community, this is the direction I want to go based off of the people you met and things you saw?
Yes, it did. And it's hard to believe that was 14 years ago was when I was, no more, 17 years ago.
Wow.
When I was a student.
It was 10 years ago, more than now, going on 11 years ago when we were, you were my producer.
Yes.
On Bill Frakes' team.
Yes, and I was the producer for Bill Frakes and Jimmy Colton the entire 8 years I was there.
For many years.
Yeah.
And I was the orange team back then.
Yes.
And last year I was, I kind of followed in your footsteps and I picked the orange team also again. So my 10-year reunion there was with the same colors, but with sort of a new sports team.
Right.
Yeah. We missed you.
Yeah, it's been hard. I've missed it a lot. It's just I haven't had much time to like work on it since I moved back to the States after being in India and China. It's just been hard for me
move
to
back to the States. You have a kid, like just all sorts of 3-year-old, all sorts of different
all these
responsibilities.
life changes that happen when you get older. When you become a middle-aged photographer.
Yeah. Well, why don't we maybe jump into some of your work? I'm not sure what you think the best something to start on would be.
The election stuff.
Election stuff.
Or
Stumping?
you know what? Let's do the stuff from New York.
New York. Greater New York. Okay.
And the reason I bring this up is because this is the stuff that you wind up doing every single day as a newspaper photographer, and it's easy to get bored.
Yeah.
It's easy to sort of just phone it in.
Right.
And I like telling stories. I like being a part of a community. I mean, I specifically developed this community of being involved with photojournalists and other journalists and artists to just, I don't know, develop creatively. And I wanted it to flow over into my work. I want to like give the people that I cover, I don't know, my all.
Yeah.
Even if it's like something completely ridiculous.
Right.
Like, you know, the mayor, we cover parades, we cover fires or deaths of firefighters. There were 2 police shootings this year, and we covered that.
Yeah, a little bit of everything.
It's a little bit of everything. You know, even like the big blizzard that wasn't in New York,
which was
which was that, or you know, I had to do the unveiling of what was it, the new Mustang, and it was on top of the Empire State Building, and I knew that it would be a small space and it would be kind of annoying.
That's ridiculous.
And right in here, I put a flash on remote to sidelight it because I knew I would get a picture of the car, but I wanted something different with like, I want to say Tom Ford, but I can't remember who the CEO of Ford is. Jim Ford.
You've been working for the most part for like the New York Times and Reuters and other wires.
Right, and the Wall Street Journal.
And the Wall Street Journal, that's right. And so a lot of the stuff you do is breaking news that other photographers are working on. I remember that was back when I shot a lot more of the breaking news type stuff, I'd see you and this big group of photographers that usually are on the same sort of beat.
Right.
Are you going to miss that?
I don't think that's going to go away. It's just it's going to be in a different city. It's going to be in a different environment. I think that's one of the things that they liked about me when I took this job was that like I don't know, I have like a real sense of what it's like to cover daily news. I mean, stuff that a lot of people roll their eyes at when they get their assignment sheet.
Right.
I mean, for me, I've been a freelancer for so long that it's like, if the phone rings at 3 a.m, I'm already sticking one leg in my pants.
Oh, yeah.
So it's like I think someone's calling about an assignment. And it's always that sense of like, I've got to be ready. It's like I can't like not turn my phone off or, you know, my phone is off right now.
Well, that was
probably
funny.
the first time my phone's been off that I haven't been on a plane in 20 years.
It's because you're officially no longer a freelancer as of today.
I'm officially no longer a freelancer.
And this is your first...
I am unemployed until Monday.
Oh, okay.
Well, until I go and see the HR department. I think until Monday,
do you have an idea of what kind of beat that you plan to be covering?
I don't think there's really a beat. That's one of the things with news photographers. I don't think there's really a beat, which is kind of nice. Your beat is pictures. Your beat is to like go and make pictures to illustrate whatever news is happening or whatever news is not happening. I mean, for me, 16 years has been a big part of this has been the story of New York, which isn't just like the news. It's like the sun setting behind the Empire State Building or, you know, the fact that now that after 11 years, the World Trade Center is open and it's a new building and it's beautiful. And sorry, I keep drifting away from the mic.
It's all right. You're blocked. I can see your face was blocked. That's why I was fixing.
So, you know, there's this great love affair with the city. The city's like one of my other friends.
Yeah.
And, you know, I get to tell its story every day, and that's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So I think I just really need to adjust to a new city, which, you know, I've had to do a couple of times. When I lived in Delhi became the second home of my heart.
Do you have any pictures from Delhi in this?
Yes.
Okay, let's pop those on. Where are we? Operation Smile, was it?
Go to, what is it? Ghost of Union Carbide.
Okay.
When I moved to India, one of the first things I read about was the Union Carbide disaster, which happened in the 80s, which was a chemical company that had an explosion, and there's a gas cloud that flew in the air and poisoned an entire community, killing thousands. That community's still there, even though the factory's no longer there. The company's no longer there, but the factory's still there. It's not producing anything, but there's still the chemicals seep into the groundwater, and people live on the fields where that factory was. And 25 years later, they're still being affected by it. When I moved to India, it was the 24th year anniversary, and I put it in the back of my mind that I wanted to do a story for the 25th anniversary.
Right.
So I kept thinking about that, and finally the opportunity came to go and work on that with a Dutch reporter that I got to be friends with was working on a piece on it too. So she didn't have a photographer, I didn't have a writer, and,
right? Right. I think some of your most powerful work was when you went overseas. I really felt like your kind of style changed from the sort of on the beat news photographer to this sort of documentary photographer.
Well, I mean, it is a big shift. You get to be slower and more methodical. You don't have to you don't have to like hope that this moment happens or chase something down the street. You have time to work on pictures. If you miss something, you can go back to it.
Do you prefer this kind of work, like on the scale of like?
I think I like them both equally. Like the other day, I covered the protest here in New York. That's a response to the protest in Baltimore, and it was pretty intense. And it's not like I haven't covered that before here, but it's one of those cases of like, where's the local angle to the national story? And again, it was one of those cases of chasing around with other friends to cover this story. You know, I've been here for so long that it's like I know almost everybody that's out there shooting as a news photographer, and somehow we're all friends. I think it's because you're sort of like-minded people.
Yeah.
You know, it's like I always say that I have a community of the like-minded.
Right. So I have also noticed in the past many years you've kind of put yourself into you photographed, I remember, in Japan, didn't you, after the earthquake and
yes.
Was it the tsunami or the earthquake?
There's an earthquake that caused a tsunami,
right? And so you ended up going there, which is kind of a scary thing, I would think, with all this radioactivity and stuff that was at the time. It was much more of like, holy crap, we don't know what's happening here.
Yeah, it really was. It wasn't. You weren't sure what was going to happen on that front. And I remember being in China. My wife's also a photographer, and she was
very good photographer.
Going for the New York Times. Yes, she was going for the New York Times, and we were living in Beijing, and I wasn't working for anyone. I didn't have an assignment. And that was after I'd come from India, where when I was in India, I would drop whatever I was doing and cover whatever was breaking. And in some ways, that's similar to like the news that you do here, except you're doing it abroad. You have slightly different resources. But she convinced me, like, she's like, I've got to go. I've got to meet the bureau chief. I've got to get the sat phone and go and file, and I need to be there in 10 hours. So she convinced me that, like, oh, it's really dangerous. You really shouldn't go. And I'm just thinking to myself, and I'm listening to her, and it's like, because she's my wife, she sort of convinced me that, like, oh, I should stay. And then half an hour after she left, I'm like, wait, what the fuck? It's just like, how do I let her convince me not to go? It's like, no other photographer would ever be able to convince me. So, you know, after the light bulb went off, I was on the phone for a travel agent, kind of saying, I need to get here, and I got to the airport. I didn't have an assignment, and I ran into.
Do we have any of those photos, by the way? Should we?
I don't.
No, we don't.
I don't know why.
I can link to some of those.
I think it's on my website somewhere. It's okay. On.
So keep talking. I got your website.
So I ran into a colleague, Adam Dean, at the airport, and he was working for the Times of London, and they had sent 2 teams of reporters, and Adam was going with one team, and the other team didn't have a photographer. So I sold myself to them and got myself away up to, one of the towns that had been devastated by the quake. And I worked for them for 5 days before the reporters went back. Then I hooked up with Paula Bronstein, another photographer from Getty. And she and I drove around for a while and just covered the story. And maybe 5 hours after I started driving with Paula, I got a text from my friend Andrew Gombert, who works for EPA. He's like, "Are you free to shoot for us there?" So I wound up shooting another 10 days there for them. And then from there, it was 5 days for Stern.
So that's kind of one of the things. So you do this a lot. You kind of put yourself in a new location. You've done this with Iowa. You've done this with India. You've done this with Japan. And what happens as a freelancer is you kind of let people know where you are, and then all of a sudden the work starts coming in a little bit.
It's a little more complicated than that.
Sure,
because it's like you really have to be responsible and resourceful, and you really have to have, I don't know, clients that have faith in you. It's like, I think that faith only came from like working in New York, working hard here. It was, my resume says that I'm reliable and resourceful. And I think that that's probably a better skill in some ways than being a good photographer.
Right.
It's like, solving problems. It's like, I don't think any editor wants to call you and say, like, "Can you do this?" And you're just like, "Well, I could, but this, and this are standing in my way."
Right.
And maybe this, and this are standing in my way, but I never say that this, and this are standing in my way. I just find a way to knock them over, get around, or under them, or over them.
Right. So before we jump into some of your career work as a freelancer, I want to kind of talk talk a little bit more about how you got into this world of photography. So, and before we do that, actually, let's have you take one scooch towards me because you keep.
Okay.
There we go. Scooch it. Very nice. All right. So, photography or getting into photography. Where did you grow up? How did you get the photography bug?
I grew up in Baltimore, which, ironically, I would be there if I'd started my job a week sooner.
Yeah. How do you feel about that, by the way, with what's going on there? Is it tough for you to see this in
It's
your
really
hometown?
tough for me to see it there because, it's where I grew up, where that CVS that was burned down is a few blocks away from where my mother and my aunt had a dress shop.
Oh.
My mother was a seamstress, and she and my aunt were both seamstress, and they had a dress shop where they would make things like prom gowns to party dresses for people.
Yeah.
Taper clothes. They did everything. And that's just a few blocks away from where they had a shop. And that was the only place they could really afford to have a shop.
And it being your hometown, Baltimore, and you being a photographer that covers these type of big events, like
I think if I weren't trying to pack and leave New York by Monday, I would probably be there. I probably would have gone like the day of Freddie Gray's funeral. I probably would have been there regardless.
Did you see the story developing? Did you think that something like this was going to happen?
After the past year of stories like this, yeah, I really did think it would develop because Baltimore is kind of a rough town in a lot of ways.
Right.
It's like they're really sweet, genuine people in so many ways, but so many people I knew when I grew up in Baltimore were poor and were put in positions of being disenfranchised. And, that sort of thing boils over after time.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm not excusing the rioting or the looting or anything like that, but I can understand how people get to the point where they feel they're pushed into that sort of thing.
Right.
So,
well, what do you feel
because
about
it's like, I don't know. I went to my parents and are beneficiaries of gentrification. They bought a dollar house in the 70s, and which was probably like, big heroin neighborhood. Between them and other people gentrifying the neighborhood, like people got pushed further and further out. So, I'm a beneficiary of that, and I can understand that, there's a world of people that didn't benefit from that just had nowhere to go, didn't have the job opportunities or like the family that supported me like I did. I had. So
yeah. And how do you feel?
Yes, it's so I know that's a long way of saying that it feels kind of personal to me. That it feels
do you feel weird about?
It's like because of that, it's like I wound up going to school with a lot of kids that are probably out there right now. It's just that I went one way and they went another.
Yeah.
And it's like every time I hear a story like that, it's like, I wonder if that could have been me.
Yeah.
If I had done something different. If I made different choices.
And what do you feel about the type of media that are descending on these types of these towns? Obviously, you've got a personal
I'm of two minds of it.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of dedicated journalists that are really good at covering stories like this. Like, did I bump Eric Thayer because he's there covering that? I mean, he's one of my best friends, and
he was just on. He was our last podcast.
He's a fantastic journalist, and I know he cares about issues like this. I know that other reporters care about issues like this, but at the same time, I know that there's a lot of, no offense to anyone just starting out, but there's a lot of people down there that are portfolio hunting.
Right.
And, it's a little bit disgraceful. It's like, I've seen it wherever I go. And I just think that, and honestly, I think it's a lot to do with, the lack of budgets in news agencies, that, no one's really reaching out to mentor younger journalists and how to do things properly. Or
right.
You're not just, you have to have a point to be there. You have to have a purpose to be there, not just to
get a pretty picture or something.
Picture.
Yeah.
It's one of the things I learned at Eddie Adams was that the best stories can be found in your own backyard.
Right.
And it's dramatic and telling and touching. Where I'm going to work on Monday, one of my new colleagues, Jessica Rinaldi, just finished a piece that's probably one of the most touching pieces of journalism that I've seen. It's there's no fires burning in the street. No one's being tear gassed.
Right.
It's just a story of a boy who suffered from burns in Burundi and the somewhat older boy who took him under his wing and treated him as a son and is putting him on the path to recovery. And if you get a chance to look at it, please do. Because to me, that's better journalism.
We'll put a link in the YouTube comments below. Yeah. Okay, so that was sort of a side tangent we got on about Baltimore.
Sorry.
We were talking about you growing up in Baltimore.
But how I got to be a photographer. I went to art school. I went to a high school for the arts, and I didn't know what I wanted to do with that. But when I was growing up, my brother and I would draw comic books and cartoons, and I want to be an artist. And it turns out I'm a terrible painter.
Yeah.
But the school also exposed me to, they had a photo program, and is Baltimore School for the Arts. And I got really good at taking pictures. That was the only class that I got an A in. I failed painting. I failed sculpture. I failed graphic design. Oh, no, I got a B- in graphic design. What am I talking about? But it's I guess I had a good sense of graphics, but I just, I failed charcoal drawing. I failed life drawing. And eventually they're just maybe you should reconsider this artist thing.
Right.
So after graduation, I found myself working at a Kinko's copy shop and, dicking around doing nothing. And I found I started realizing that I had always taken all our family pictures. There's so few pictures of me as a kid growing up because I guess I'm taking all the pictures. So a cousin lent me his, Niker mat and a 35 f2. And I just started taking pictures from there, and I loved it.
Yeah.
It just changed my life.
And so when did you turn and get to make this professional? When was do you remember the first time you got paid for photography?
Probably to shoot some family party.
Family party, yeah.
But, I wound up with an internship here and there, and then I landed a job in Trenton, New Jersey, as a staff photographer for the Trenton Times.
Right.
And it was the strangest thing because I had never even heard of Trenton, really. I mean, other than a social studies class that it's the capital of New Jersey.
Right.
And, I spent 3.5 years there, and it was kind of time spinning my wheels. And eventually I got a new director of photography who liked my work, but they weren't putting anything into photography. And he said, you're too good for this paper. You should get out of here. And it's and if you don't find a way to get out of here in 6 months, I am probably going to fire you just to light a fire under your ass.
Well, that's so nice to hear, actually.
I had another friend from high school who wound up being a photographer, and he was out in L.A., and he was working on the AFI Film Festival, and he's like, you should come out and, shoot the film festival, shoot behind the scenes at the film festival. And I did, and I hadn't taken a vacation, so I had 6 or 8 weeks vacation, something absurd like that. So I went to LA for a month and rented a car, shot the festival, drove around, shot a little for AP, shot a little for the LA Times, and that was... And I thought, oh my God, I'm going to stay in LA. This is awesome. It's like, I'm never going back to New Jersey. But, you know, I realized that I wasn't a Los Angeles person. Just, you know, the day I was supposed to leave, I woke up and told my friend he had to drive me to the airport without any real explanation. And 2 weeks later, I was back in Trenton, spinning my wheels again, wondering what I was going to do. And I can't remember what drove me to the Daily News, but it was, I want to remember the photographer that said that I should come see the Daily News. I think it might have been David Hanshew. He's like, oh, you should come see the Daily News. And I don't remember where we met, whether it was at Fashion Week, the one time I had convinced the Trenton paper to let me cover that. And I go up to the Daily News and I show them my portfolio, and the photo editor like looks at my book. He's like, flip, 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 and, like scowls and walks away. And I'm like, oh crap, he's gonna like tell me it's like you're no good here, kid. He comes back, he throws a box of film in my lap. He's like, I got an assignment for you at 3 o'clock, kid. Can you handle it? I was just like, yes.
And so that was the transition to New York.
That was the transition to New York.
And you've been here now for, you said like 7?
That was 1999.
1999.
So that was 16 years ago, yeah.
Wow. I was a junior in high school.
That was 2 weeks before the New York City Marathon. And I wound up covering the New York City Marathon. And I wound up covering it at a place that, you know, as the years went by, would become my favorite place to cover the marathon. It's like 4th Avenue and Union Street in Brooklyn, which is now a few blocks away from where I live. And it's a water station, and I remember shooting the pack of runners coming towards me. And one of the runners, like of the elite runners, reached out, grabbed a cup of water, tossed it at his face, and I totally nailed it. And I went back to the paper. I was like, oh, that's a great shot. And I scanned a picture, and I put it into the system, and they were like, shit, that's the guy that won, and he won by a hair.
Oh my gosh. So you ended up getting the best shot of it. Like, of all the people.
I mean, there's stupid luck, right?
I mean, there's like 30,000 people doing the marathon. Like, maybe that's more than, I don't know.
It's a bit of an exaggeration, but it was like, it was one of those, like, of all the stupid luck. I mean, it was just a nice picture.
Right.
But it was just of all the stupid luck.
Yeah.
And, I mean, from there, it was just like one thing to the next, to the next, to the next. And then I don't remember what assignment it was, but I was covering something with Jim Estrin from the New York Times. And I was feeling bored and frustrated with the Daily News. And, you know, we're filing at Starbucks. He's like, well, when are you going to come work for us? And it's like, really? It's like, again, it was like one of those cases of being part of this community that people took note of your work and said, like, hey, man, come on.
It's a small community. Photojournalism is a very small slice of the photography pie, a very small slice compared to all the rest of the photography that's out there you can make money doing. But then everybody pretty much knows everybody. I mean, you know, got a couple photojournalists in the crowd here.
Yeah, there's Gary He and Justin Sullivan.
Yeah, all the way from the West Coast too. So let's jump into your Stumping Grounds work, which I've pulled up here.
Okay.
Can you kind of give me an idea of when and why and how you started this this blog with a couple of your friends?
Well, I think that it's the birth of it. The kernel of the idea started in 2004, covering the RNC here in New York. And one of my friends, Andrew Gombert, yet again, was traveling with Carrie, and it looked like so much fun. I was like, oh, man, I really want to do that next time around. And, you know, it sort of sat in the back of my head. And as 2008 got closer and closer, it was becoming apparent that either Barack Obama or Hillary Clinton were going to run for president, or both. And if that was the case, one of them was probably going to be president. And it's, you know, it's one of those moments where it's just like, wow, I really want to be on the ground floor of like covering history. And so I just didn't know how to approach it. And I kept talking about it with people. And then Brendan McDermott, one of the chief photographers at Reuters, goes to me, he's like, well, why don't you move to Iowa? Because there's like 19 people running for president, and they're all going to be in Iowa.
I remember when you made this decision to move to Iowa. I was like,
Iowa?
No way.
I'm not going to move to Iowa. Fuck that. So somehow I'd managed to convince some agency to let me cover Obama's announcement. So I went out to Illinois to the state capitol with Josh and Eric, actually. Those are two.
Joshua Lott.
Joshua Lott and Eric Thayer.
Yeah.
And we covered Obama's announcement. But for some reason, I out of pocket paid to fly with the traveling press to go with Obama on his first, campaign stumps. So I'm on the campaign plane, and that's exciting. And, I'm covering the flight to the first place they stop is Iowa. And we get off the plane and take a bus, and there's people all along the road cheering for Obama. And I'm just like, holy shit, this guy's the real deal.
Yeah.
And we get to, what was it? I think it was like Iowa State University, and the place is packed to the rafters. And it's like, this is the guy. This is the guy that's going to be president. It's like, I really want to find a way to cover this. So, and I'm like, this is unreal. Look at how many people are here. And it's like, and it's not that they're all there to see him because they support him. It's that they're all there because they're curious. They're all there because they want to know what this guy's message is. They're all there because they want to know what this guy's going to do as president. And for the longest time before that, I just couldn't picture why Iowa was so important until I actually met Iowans. And they are probably some of the most informed voters in the country. Mm-hmm. So I get back to New York and I go to Brendan, you were right. I'm going to find a way to move to Iowa. He's like, well, Eric wants to go, and so does Josh. I was like, now they're, what, really? Slumber party? So, we start to talk about it over drinks, over many nights, wondering if this is a good idea, And finally we decided, yeah, it's a good idea. And we rented a house. It's like $1,000 a month, and between the four of us. And off we went to Iowa. And every single day, there was somebody in town running for president. And every single day, there was this community of Iowans wondering what that guy had to say.
Like legitimately curious.
Yes, legitimately curious. Legitimately participating in the process.
Mm-hmm. And so what was that experience like, living with a bunch of photographers doing this? You guys created, so you guys had this competition a little bit, which started the stumping grounds.
Yes. The competition was great because, we had been friends to a degree, but we weren't that close at the time. But we got very close very quickly. And I realized that these guys would be friends for life, and that, we thought about things the same way. And I didn't want to ever embarrass myself in front of them. So, and I think they felt the same way. So I feel like we all stepped up our game. Mm-hmm. Like Eric, Josh, and I all freelance for Reuters. Eric, Josh, and I all freelance for Getty. Eric, Josh, and I all freelance for the New York Times. So it was like this, one of us would get an assignment from one, and then the rest of us would start calling around to the others. It's like, hey, McCain's in town, and interested. Oh, we're not covering McCain. Well, the Times is covering it. And they're like, oh, let me call you back. So then they would yeah, okay, go cover it. And so we'd carpool to cover campaigns. So
this is one of your shots that I've seen in a lot of places. Was this wasn't election night, was it?
No, that was the DNC. And
the DNC.
It's funny, this picture ran in Rolling Stone.
Really?
And the Rolling Stone that came out after the election, like Scout to Function, who was here the last time I was here seeing you guys, she was also traveled with us. She's an honorary stumper, and so's Gary He, who's got 2 pictures on the site.
This was election night.
No, actually, that was not election night.
That looks like a victory photo to me.
Every night looked like a victory photo to me with them. When he lost New Hampshire and he came out and conceded, it was almost like a victory speech. I mean, he lost it by a hair. And I'd never heard a concession speech sound like victory until then.
That's great. And so this website, it still exists today.
Yeah, it still exists. It's all it takes is like $4 to pay the server fee. So
right.
There's no point in taking it down.
So all of these, I guess now you're not going to be continuing the stumping grounds clearly, I guess, because you're no longer freelance.
Right.
You think it'll still continue?
I'd like it to. I'd like for those guys to keep doing it, and all of them have expressed interest in covering the election. And I'm sure, being close to New Hampshire. Maybe once in a while I'll get up to New Hampshire to cover something. So, it'll have its own life in its own way. In some ways, I wanted it to move beyond just a website and have a bigger audience, more of a social media audience. I mean, when we started that site, somehow we had 14,000 followers.
Oh, wow.
Now each of us has about 25 from Instagram.
Yeah, so let's talk about Instagram a little bit now.
Between us, we have like a following that's about the size of your average mid-sized newspaper.
Yeah.
Like, what's a mid-sized newspaper now? Like 100,000, 200,000?
Probably about 100,000, I'd guess. Social media, things are changing, the landscape, New York Times now has like 5 feeds for Instagram.
Right.
They're different sections. I'm sure Reuters and all the others and have their Instagram and Facebook and social media and different things. How do you feel about that? I mean, I'm just in general, there's a lot to be said, I know.
Another one of those cases that I have mixed emotions about it. I have mixed emotions about the Instagram because suddenly everyone is a photographer. And honestly, everyone is a photographer. I mean, it's like I love that people love photography. I mean, I wouldn't have a job if people didn't love photography. Mm-hmm. But I don't know. I get sick of like the selfies. I'm glad that more and more museums are banning selfie sticks. It's I want to see pretty pictures. I don't want to see that you're a narcissist.
Yeah.
So I think that it's my only beef with Instagram is it enables people to be narcissist. I mean, further than they normally would.
Are you, with your photography or with your Instagramming, is it all iPhone work?
It's about 60-40.
Yeah.
It's like, because sometimes I take a picture of my camera and I think, oh, this would make a nice Instagram. All the stuff from the beach is all the iPhone. Since I got a new iPhone, yay Apple, I got an iPhone 6 Plus. It's maybe since then it's 85-90% iPhone.
Yeah. Yeah, so the 6 Plus, I've been noticing a lot of photographers, filmmakers, etc., like starting to use the 6 Plus more so than the 6. I've got the 6. Do you find that extra size is great, or what do you think?
I really got it for filing purposes.
Oh, really?
So I used it to file on deadline. I use wireless transmitters in my cameras or iFi cards to send pictures from camera to iPhone. And I can edit, caption, and FTP pictures from the palm of my hand. And the bigger screen makes it easier to do.
Right.
So, here's something from an assignment somewhere.
He's showing me some photos.
Yeah, I'm showing pictures.
Careful with your scrolling. I don't want to see anything I might not want to see.
There's only pictures of my kid. So, okay, here's like what is it? Occupy Wall Street. Most of that I sent from my iPhone.
And do you edit them in the iPhone too? So is it like nowadays we have the editing capabilities like we didn't used to?
Yes.
So you use the iPhone's functionality to brighten and all that kind of stuff.
Yes. And there's Photoshop that's for the iPhone, and it's pretty basic, but really what I use is something called Photogene.
Photogene.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which has the FTP software. You can do minimal sharpening.
Can you selectively dodge and burn or
not really?
Not really. That's the only problem I find with editing with the iPhone.
You just have to expose better.
Whoa, snap.
So I mean, that's just I don't know. It's not as forgiving. So
right.
It's like, you have to be more on top of what you want to make picture-wise.
Let's jump into Operation Smile. This is something you did. It's an NGO, yeah?
Yes.
And, what is it? What was the process to connect with them? Why were you interested in working with them?
Well, remember that boss that I said that would fire me? He became, in his retirement, he became their media director. And, he told them that's like, your pictures for your ads and your campaigns, they're terrible. You should really hire photojournalists to tell stories of this. It just so happens that I know a bunch.
Yeah.
So he called me up. He's like, hey, listen, can you do me a favor? We can't pay you, but it's like, if you'd like, we can't pay you, but you could stay a couple weeks in Brazil.
So this was in Brazil?
No, this is actually in China. This is in Uyghur region, like the eastern part, far east in China.
Uh-huh.
Or far west, I forget.
So what do? They fly you out?
Yeah, they flew me out. I was in Beijing at the time for this one.
Uh-huh.
But the first one was in Brazil, in a town called Fortaleza.
Uh-huh.
So I flew down to Fortaleza with them, and I worked on a story. I worked on that project for them. And since they gave me free airfare and put me up in a hotel, which I was able to extend the hotel stay, I stayed for another week and a half and did a story on a favela.
Uh-huh.
Then came back here and... a couple, like a year or so later, I can't remember where they sent me, but then, I've been to Kenya for them, to Ethiopia, 2 places in China, when I was in India. So really,
all sort of the same stuff, shooting
sort of the same stuff, the surgeries, one of the nice things is they do these surgeries to fix cleft palates or other facial issues with children. And, you can tell little stories for them. So it's still storytelling. So we generally, each mission, we try to find a family that we can follow from start to finish. Like once we found a family in Kenya that we went to their house before the surgery, walked with them 20 miles to the hospital, and then walk back after the surgery.
Uh-huh.
So it was a real
20
process.
miles?
I'm exaggerating.
Okay.
But it's
we exaggerate a little on this podcast, I suppose.
It's just only because I don't know how far it was.
Right.
I really don't. It seems like 20 miles.
Yeah. So that's pretty intense. Are you so you've done a handful of jobs for them? Do you feel very rewarded doing that kind of?
I do.
Work.
And it's I've worked for the International Organization of Migration and Mercy Corps, and they've been great. It's whenever disaster strikes, especially like IOM or Mercy Corps, they're always some of the first aid organizations on the ground to deliver food, water, whatever necessities that people need.
Right.
And they're also a great resource for information. I mean, they keep great records. They know what's happened, how many people have been injured, how many people have been killed, and you can call them up and ask them for resources like that as a reporter or as a photographer. It's like, what's going on here? Do you have anyone on the ground there? And they'll tell you because they want, for them to have media coverage of what's going on in a disaster, to them, it helps get money. It helps donors open their wallets.
Sure.
So if we can point journalists in the right direction,
that's something I want to talk to you about is how to get more involved in those. It's something that I've always wanted to do in different capacities, and the most that I've done, I guess, my segue into your next portfolio here is that I did something when there was the Haiti earthquake.
Right.
I ended up jumping on a plane, doing some relief missions, taking pictures, and helping out. One day. It wasn't like something like you've done with weeks at a time. It's something that I'd like to get involved in more. So we'll talk about that afterwards.
You've got the work, and if you have the connections, sometimes you can go to aid agencies and pitch things to them. You could research what projects they're working on, and 9 times out of 10, most of them aren't really documenting their projects. And I do wonder a bit about the gray areas of ethics because I don't really want to be the mouthpiece for someone, even if it's some aid agency that I believe in.
Right.
It's like I want to know the work that they're doing just for the sake. I think it's a good story. I think it's a real public interest.
Right.
So, with IOM covers migratory issues. And for me, that's extremely important, which means they cover a lot of internally displaced people. They cover a lot of refugees.
Right.
They set up camps. They track how many people cross borders. They're probably very busy right now with everything that's going on with Syria, with everything that's going on in Yemen. They're tracking all these migratory patterns. How many people are displaced? Where are they living? Where are they going? Are they able to live comfortably there? Are there opportunities for them there? And these are the first people that you want to ask about these issues, that you want to understand what's going on so that your public can know.
Wow.
So,
all right. So let's transition over to Haiti.
Well, this is after covering the election in the U.S., I sort of realized that I was moving to India a year before the Indian elections, 18 months before Nepal's elections, 24 months before Sri Lanka's elections. And sometime after the Indian election or before, there'd be the Afghan elections. So I sort of sold myself as an election expert. It's like, I know how to cover an election.
Right.
So I wound up covering all of those elections. And one of the things that struck me about all of those was like that, especially in Afghanistan, where there was like basically a war still going, that people still wanted to get out and vote. So I really wanted to try and find a way to create a stumping grounds abroad, but that never really happened. But I really like the elections. I like elections because to me, elections are like one of those silver bullets. Like, what is it? Access to healthcare, access to the polls, freedom of the press. To me, those are like the silver bullets that like level the playing field for everyone worldwide.
Right.
So I thought that like all of these went hand in hand, or education. These are the things that like level the playing field. So it's like if you have access to all of these, it's like your social strata, your standing in life goes up. So I mean, that's one of the reasons why I really like covering elections. And this is the stuff from Haiti is the first election after the earthquake.
The earthquake. When was the earthquake? Was that 2010?
I think that was 2010.
Yeah. Can't believe it's been 5 years since that already.
It's hard to believe. Yeah. Martelli's out of office. There's an earthquake. There's an election this year. This is how a presidential candidate and eventual president campaigns in Haiti.
Wow. Different. Very different.
Very different. Now, to be fair, he is one of the most famous musicians in Haiti.
Okay. And how long did you spend in Haiti?
2.5 weeks. Like, I went for Reuters.
Were you by yourself this time?
No, actually. I went, well, they had a photographer based there at the time, but it's too big of a country and too many candidates running for you to be able to have one photographer cover it. So I convinced Gary Hirschhorn that I was going to be a good person to cover the election. And he believed in me and said, go ahead. It's like,
yeah, Gary's great. I got to get him on the podcast.
So, yeah, he would be great to have on the podcast.
He's been to a couple of our events here and is always... And his Instagram is amazing.
Yeah, his
like
Instagram's
one of my
amazing.
favorite Instagram accounts, I got to say.
So it's one person that seems to shoot the same building every day and make it look fantastic. I mean, that's not all he shoots, but...
Yeah.
So I wanted to understand like how people would get to the polls after all of this and whether they would still go. And again, it was one of those cases of like, it's important. People got out there and went. They went to the polls. They voted. They voted by candlelight.
How do you feel like going to, like, I've been to Haiti briefly. I've been to India where you've been. I know you've been to Bangladesh, right? And other really, I guess, third world type countries. What is it like for you? Is there a little bit of like culture shock coming back?
I always say countries in development.
Countries in development. That's the third world was the wrong thing. Yeah,
I'm only kidding.
But still, yeah. I mean, not all of India is that way. I mean, there's
a thriving middle class. There's a thriving upper class. It is still one of the poorest countries in the world. Well, it's not one of the poorest countries in the world, but it's like one of those countries where like wealth doesn't exactly trickle down. I mean, there's 1.1 billion people. And a lot of them are living in poverty.
Right.
But I don't know. It's a great country. There's a lot that's still being done. There's factories being built, jobs that are being created. Those are interesting things. Schools are opening I don't know. There's a lot going on there.
Yeah.
I mean, when I moved there, they were supposed to experience like 6% GDP growth. So, but that didn't really happen. In fact, like its growth has really slowed down since I left.
Yeah. Well, I guess what really just shocked me was the lower end of that spectrum and how people literally, are eating, drinking, crapping in the gutters, like living there. And
I don't know. I think to me, it's like trying to find like the dignity in living there. I mean, those are the important stories. I mean, like everybody still has a family. Everybody loves their family. Everybody just wants to live happily. And I mean, I think that's all I really want to like tell in the stories of that. It's like, I mean, the poverty is not that interesting to me. It's really the way that people live. I mean, and not that they live poorly, but like how they live, whether they live with dignity, whether they live like comfortably. I want to find a way to like tie them to me. It's like, I have a brother, I have a wife and a son, and it's like, so do they. And it's like, I want to try and find whatever unifies us and not whatever makes us different.
Yeah. I like that. I like that about you. That's great. We were already talking about Instagram a little bit before, but you've got an Instagram portfolio that kind of gives a better breath because we just sort of looked at the most recent photos before. But this collection, I think, kind of shows just your more New York-y type work.
Yeah, I mean, these are just...
Random moments.
Yeah. Instagram, I just don't ever want to be work.
Uh-huh.
So I just really want to make fun pictures from whether it's news or whether I'm just like on the subway and suddenly there's drunk girls like blowing horns. It's
right.
just like...
Right.
It's just meant to be fun. I mean, it's creative, and it's like being creative is meant to be fun for me, and that's all I really wanted my Instagram to be. Sometimes I get more obsessed with it than others, where it's like, oh man, I really got to make something today. And
right.
Other days, I just let it slide.
Do you feel that Instagram is changing at all since you've started? Like, do you think it's becoming less popular, more popular? I mean, like with nowadays, Snapchat's big and I know that. I mean, with that face you just made, it seemed like oh, what's that? Like, do you use it or
no? I mean, what's
exactly?
It's almost just. I mean. Isn't Snapchat the one that disappears?
Yes. Well, they also have now stories where basically you can make a story with your different clips and it's viewable for 24 hours. And I only just a few days ago, with the help of my younger sister, she got my wife and I started on it. And it's actually pretty interesting. It is a bummer that things disappear, in my opinion. But Jabin Botsford,
right,
just is now doing a Washington Post Snapchat from Baltimore. Like it's the Washington Post Snapchat. So it's like,
it just seems so odd. I mean,
oh no, I mean, I agree. It's very strange. It's very different, but people are using it and it is strangely addictive once you get started. I think it's weird
for news to use it because I think one of the things of news is to have an archive to like create a testament of what came before and for people to be able to go back to
Here, sit up, scoot over here. You're out of the frame now. You're slouching.
Yeah, I'm slouching now.
He's too tired. Yeah, so I don't know. I don't know where things are going with that. It just seems like social media is really taking over.
I mean, I like social media. One of the things I like about Instagram now is like engaging an audience.
Right.
That's fun. I mean, it's like it's nice to have like people look at your work that's not like my usual cast of characters looking at my work.
Yeah. So we actually have some questions on the internet. Can you pull up the microphone and talk it or no? Well, okay, I'll just repeat it. He doesn't want to be
internet questions.
Internet. So how do you handle your emotion after seeing all of this sort of realness was the word?
I don't know. It's like, I mean, it really, sometimes it depresses me, but it's at the same time, I don't know. I guess I internalize it or I don't really take it with me. Mm-hmm. I take the memories with me. I take the memories with me. I want to let go of it because I don't want it to poison me. I want it to I want to keep going forward. So I really just let go of it. It's like Sachin, he's the boy at the end here, and he can't walk. His legs are deformed. I mean, they've never really developed. And they don't know if it's like due to them living on the groundwater, but he was the sweetest kid. All he ever wanted to do was play cricket. Mm-hmm. And you're thinking to yourself, God, this kid is never going to be able to play cricket. And it's a little bit sad because it's like, whatever I dream of, I could pretty much do.
Right.
And there's not to say that we live in a world where like there's enough money out there to finance whatever this kid needs to make any of his dreams come true. But whether that actually happens or not is up for debate. And I really thought about him constantly. It's like, and my flatmate bought him a cricket bat and a ball. And, we played cricket with him. I mean, and he's pretty good for a kid that gets around on just his hands. And, it seems kind of trivial. I mean, it's like a small little thing, just giving the kid a cricket bat. But just to... I don't know, just to feel like that I don't know. I'm sorry, I'm rambling on this question. It's sort of like a trick
I mean,
question.
have you had an instance where like, okay, so we're gonna pull up on your website now. This is a story that kind of just blew me away a little bit.
Right.
And so this is. Can you explain what's happening here?
Well, there's a town called Jaria in India where there are coal mines, and people live on the fields of the coal mines. And the reason they live on the fields of the coal mines is because the coal is the only way to make money. They harvest coal and sell it on the black market. Mm-hmm. They sell it on the black market. But there are all these coal fires that are going on there, and the ground is not exactly that stable. And every so often, the ground will give way, and someone will fall through a hole into a coal fire and burn to death.
Oh my God.
Meanwhile, they're also living on land which is like there's nothing but the smoke of coal, so they're breathing in carcinogenics. And
these poor kids. I mean, it's just children living on it.
Well, it's not just children. I mean, it's everyone.
Yeah.
Everyone lives on it. Everyone works on it. But I mean, this is the only opportunity that people have for work.
And how do you deal, like after you go and see what these people are doing and realize that you've probably in your whole life never had to deal with the amount of work that what looks like in these photos, the amount of work and labor that these kids and men and women do on a daily basis in your whole life. I mean, I can't even imagine going through something like this. What do you think when you go back to your hotel or whatever? Like, does it just kind of like you block it out?
I don't block it out. I mean, it stays with me. I mean, I think for me the best thing it does is it makes me want to do more of it, because I really want people to see stories like this. I really want, but this little girl, she's got this beautiful blue dress and a skipping rope through a coal field. I mean, I want people to see that these people still have lives, that they're still happy people, or that they still have people that care for them, that they have a community, but I mean that they could live better, that I mean, all it does is really make me want to do more of it, because I really want to tell stories of people who are disenfranchised in a lot of ways. Because it's like one of our workshop instructors, Michael Williamson, said that he's the world's biggest lefty liberal. So there's no such thing as objective journalism. He wants to do journalism that makes people see how other people are lived, to make them open their wallets, in a sense. I mean, I'm sort of simplifying it, but I mean, he wants to draw attention to these things because he wants people to get help. He wants the world to see that this is happening, that other people are in need, and that we have plenty, that we should give more, that we should support more. I mean, I really just want, I don't know, I didn't go there because I thought that I'm going to make something for my portfolio. I went because I really wanted to know how people live. Does someone really live like this?
Can we talk a little bit about this burn ward?
Yes.
So we're on Keith's website, by the way, keithbedford.com. I'll check all these out. But these are some pretty intense photos. I mean,
well, Nairobi has one burn ward, and they get a lot of patients because a lot of people are using cooking oils unsafely. They'll either cook inside of small homes where there's no ventilation, or children knock over the fire, or because the cost of cooking oil is so much more expensive than, for some reason, jet fuel, people wind up selling them jet fuel, and it's highly flammable, and it explodes and causes these burns. And this is a hospital board that's overwhelmed mostly from people who've been burned by cooking fires.
And you were on this assignment for...
I was there for... This is one of those Operation Smile trips. So I wound up staying in Kenya for 6 weeks after this. And I was in Kenya the night that Obama defeated Hillary. So I wound up covering Kenyans celebrating a fellow Kenyan.
Oh, really?
Basically winning the nomination for the US president.
Wow. Yeah, I remember I was here in New York during that.
But this was there was a Kenyan aid agency that really wanted pictures, and I didn't really know what I was going to be doing in Kenya. So
was this difficult for you to cover?
This is really difficult for me to cover.
This seems like it would be the hardest thing.
It was really hard to hear people scream and people be in pain, and especially children. So this is really hard. It's there was once, I think, covering this, I just covered my ears because someone was screaming so much in pain, and I just thought to myself, I couldn't do this. And, I sort of quickly realized that, like, I needed to sort of really do this if that's how I felt, because I felt so uncomfortable there that, like, I thought other people should feel uncomfortable. I thought that other people should see that this is an important story. That
well, I think that's what Jimmy Colton says. Great photo is, what does he say? Great photo is one that reaches down your throat and gives your heart a tug, or something like that.
So, I mean, what they really, like the aid agency that I shot this for, what they really wanted was to do something for a safety campaign to convince people to not cook indoors in these small little huts with, like, basically little kerosene heaters, and to not wear clothes that are flammable and like, things like that. So, I mean, this story was really a story for an aid agency. Like, so
I think we have a few more, two more questions.
In Haiti?
Okay, so where in Haiti did you shoot those photos?
That last one was Port-au-Prince. I think everything was in Port-au-Prince.
Okay, Port-au-Prince, Haiti.
Yeah.
And then what editing software do you use?
I start off with Photo Mechanic, which is what I use to, like. So
this is Photo Mechanic for those that are interested, actually. So
Camera Bits. They're a small company, but they make something that's pretty specific.
Some beeping going on in here. Turn off the beeping. Beeping. There we go.
All I had to do was point.
All I had to do is just point. So let's just let them know. Photo Mechanic's a great software where you can look at photos just like this on the screen. You can select. You can do slideshows, which is what I've been doing.
Right.
Also, there's information, so your IPTC information here where you can add.
I mean, every software. I mean, Lightroom has all of this in it, but it's like in putting IPTC data and doing selects in Lightroom is way more difficult.
And then from here you can FTP.
I will never understand why they don't streamline that, because it's it would just make it easy to just have one software. It's like, I love Photo Mechanic just because of the simplicity of it.
It's been hard for me because a lot of people are using Lightroom and talk about it, but Lightroom has this different sort of library systems where it's just a whole different sort of workflow, and that's been my difficulty of trying to switch, I guess, to a different way. I use Photo Mechanic into Photoshop afterwards.
I had done that for years, and I'm probably going back to Photoshop now because I don't think the paper uses Lightroom.
Right.
I've been using Lightroom for the past 5 or 6 years. It's great. I mean, it's super simple. Although being able to, like, work in layers without actually having to work in layers makes the editing process even easier. I mean, I really use Photo Mechanic just for all of my selects and selecting and doing IPTC data. Then I use Lightroom to color correct or sharpen and crop and things like that.
Do you have any, I mean, I think we've talked a lot about everything here. Do you have any, like, words of wisdom to those that might want to follow in your footsteps, I guess, like I did, and so on?
Oh, God, I thought of this, too, because I knew you were going to ask this question. I think the biggest thing is pay it forward, which I said in one other post, where a lot of people have helped me along the way. It's like from Mike Lipak, who was that person that threw me that first box of film, to Bill Frakes and Jimmy Colton, to Eddie Adams. I mean, Eddie was a great inspiration to a lot of photographers, and just like getting a chance to go to that workshop changed my world.
He's really been wanted to pay it forward.
Yes. Because I say paying it forward is probably like the best advice I can give you. It's just like, if you can help someone else, help them. People have put me up on their couch. People have lent me money. People have given me a ride. What was it? When I was in Afghanistan, and I had my wallet stolen, and Pedro Ugarte, who was the head photographer for AFP, didn't give me money. He gave me 6 days of assignments.
Oh, really?
And paid me in cash at the end, because that's the only way to get paid in Afghanistan. Oh. So that was awesome. Thank you, Pedro.
I'm going to call the IRS about that.
That's not true. But, like, other people, I've traveled around the world, and like other people have just put me on their couch when I've landed up there, and they've like put me on their couch. They've given me a ride. They've, you know, lent me a lens or a CF card, or given me an editor's name and phone number. They've bought me drinks, and I've done the same for them. It's like, I mean, all of that is really important, just to pay it forward, to be, oh wow, you've got the Robert's got the
I found this on my
Orange
computer.
Team video. I don't even have this. I think you should give me a copy of this.
So this is actually the Orange Team portfolio video, and at the end we had this portrait. So this is when we first met.
Yes.
This is in 2000, I think 4, like you said, and the Eddie Adams Workshop. And
is that RJ back there?
It is RJ.
RJ Singosti.
Yeah. We had a nice
Dana
team.
Romanoff with. This is like probably one of the 3 rock star. There's Jay. This is probably one of the 3 rock star teams that I had as a producer. Paris.
So
I mean, it's like I forgot how good every photographer is on this team.
Well, that's the thing about the workshop, is they're all great.
That's
passed away. Yeah. Anyway, I think that's really great words of wisdom, is to pass it forward, because I mean, I don't think that I've expressed it enough. I mean, when I think about having moved here as an intern, you know, fresh out of Ohio, really, you know, starting freelancing and there are some photographers that are kind of ruthless here in the city, especially the news photographers.
There are some ruthless people.
And, you know, I had some problems with them at the beginning, but really the overarching feeling was that, you know, I had folks like you and Andrew Gombert and those other freelancers that were kind of in this group,
right,
where we would always meet and chat and share ideas and pass corporate jobs to each other and from each other. I
mean, it's a great community, and it's like I don't know how I would have done it without it. I don't know how I would have done anything without the community I live in.
And I mean, are you scared at all about this transition? Like,
in a way, yes. I mean, it's not like it's work that I've never done before, but it's all these people have said all of these nice things about me, and it makes me feel like I did when I moved to Iowa, where it's like, oh God, I can't embarrass myself.
Yeah, don't screw up. Don't mess it up.
You know, people gave me great references. People have said that I'm a great addition. People have just been extremely nice and supportive, and I don't know, even the opportunity, it's just like, it's heartwarming. Like, Angel Franco sent me a note today saying that congratulations, and he remembers how proud he was when he became a staffer, and that he holds that in his heart to today.
Yeah, I saw that on your Facebook.
I got that this morning before I came here, and I guess that's the energy I'm taking into this job. It's like, I'm proud, how proud in my heart I am to have this opportunity.
Right. Well, let me just sort of close this sucker out. Before I do, I want to just give a quick few shout-outs to ASMP. We've got National Press Photographers Association, Canon Professional Services.
And thank you, Canon, for sending me a whole big box of kit to test out. Since I've never used Canons. And they gave me a great big box of kit when a friend, Andrew Gombert, put me in touch with CPS to say that, like, oh, he's switching to Canon. He has no idea what he's doing with it.
Yeah, CPS is really great with these types of things.
And I've shot some pretty beautiful pictures with them over the past week. So thank you, guys.
Yeah, thank you, Canon. And lastly, I'm going to give a quick little plug to a little photo expedition I'm doing in Maui in about 6 weeks now.
Oh, I want to go.
You want to go?
Yeah.
Well, that's the idea, is that we're going to prove the concept of this workshop in Maui. It's going to happen at the Four Seasons Hotel, or resort, I should say. We're going to have some, Canon will be out there.
They're going to eat a lot of poi.
Yeah. There's going to be all sorts of really great gear and things to do. So go to MauiWorkshop.com. Myself and Peter Lockley are running this. Peter was a student at Eddie Adams when I was a student.
Wow.
So that kind of shows how things kind of, turn into whatever. So
I think your team and my last team producing are the 2 best teams that I've ever had, outside of the team that when I was a student.
Okay.
I mean, because I felt like we were kind of rock stars, and but your team and the 2008 team, which has Melissa Golden, Mustafa Abdulaziz on it, it's like, just killer photographers, man. It's just like no hand holding at all. Just, I don't even know why you need a workshop. You're brilliant.
Yeah, well, that's nice of you to say. And then we should, your social media, you're just at Keith Bedford on everything.
I'm at Keith Bedford on everything.
Awesome. Well, Keith.
Thanks, Robert.
Such a pleasure, as always. And thank you so much, Keith.
Thanks.
Have a good one. See you later, everyone.
Bye.